Call this meeting to order. This would be the meeting for regular board meeting for the Desert Water Agency on August 6, 2024 at 8 o'clock in the morning. Thank you everybody for being here. So just a little housekeeping. Wow, that's kind of loud this morning. If everyone could make sure that their electronic devices are muted here in the room, and for those of you that are participating virtually, we can, if you could mute your microphones until and unless you're ready to speak at public comment. For the purposes of the roll call and for voting, I will call on directors in the following order: Director Grasha, Director Bloomer, Secretary Treasurer McKenna, Vice President Bowman, and President Ortega. And as I said, all votes will be conducted via roll call. And with that, I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. So we are going to go to roll call, and if Ms. Baca could take that, please.
Director Grasha.
Present.
Director Bloomer.
Present.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
Present.
Vice President Bowman.
Here.
And President Ortega.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Item 4 on our agenda is public comments regarding items that are not on today's agenda. So those would be items that are under the purview of the water agency, but just not on today's agenda. We ask that members of the public keep their comments to no more than 3 minutes, and remind them that because these are items that are not on today's agenda, that the board cannot address or take action. Ms. Baca, have we received any public comment today for this meeting?
No public comments have been received.
Okay. If there are members in the room today who would like to speak, members of the public or online, please come to the podium or raise your hand virtually. Seeing none, we can move to item 5, which is public comment regarding items that are on today's agenda. Again, we ask that you keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes. And if there are any members of the public that would like to speak on an agenda item, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll move to item 6, and we're taking our agenda a little bit out of order today because we have a presentation from our friends at the Mission Springs Water District on groundwater quality protection program. And I believe it's going to be one of you, Marion, or I don't know. Maybe it's going to be both of you.
Yeah, Director Ortega, I just wanted to give a little background.
Okay.
So back in June, you had asked staff if we would reach out to Mission Springs Water District regarding their septic to sewer program out there, and which is actually called the Groundwater Quality Protection Program. Right. And I reached out to Brian, and he said, absolutely, let me know when you'd like to come. And so we scheduled this date, and so Brian put together a presentation and along with Marion on their groundwater quality protection program. So I'll lead it over to Brian.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good morning.
Thanks for coming down.
Thank you so much, members of the board, staff. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Before we get started, I would like to recognize the folks that we have with us from Mission Springs Water District. First, our Vice President, Robert Griffith, and who will be giving the presentation, our Assistant General Manager, Marion Champion. Marion, please.
Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Brian. Good afternoon, President Ortega, good morning, President Ortega and members of the board. Not used to a morning board meeting. As General Manager Macy stated, my name is Marion Champion. I'm with Mission Springs Water District. And today I'm going to give you a general overview of our groundwater quality protection program. And I have a few quick slides that we'll go through, and then we can go into some deeper dives after the presentation if you'd like. So I'm going to jump into this. The district began working on our groundwater protection program since the 1970s, back when we had our first assessment district passed, and with the construction of Allen L. Horton wastewater treatment facility. That facility is named after one of our long-term directors who was instrumental in gaining the public's trust to support the building of that plant. Fast forward to 1995, and that's when the current groundwater quality protection program was initiated. The program overlies areas where high-quality potable water is delivered but not treated for direct reuse. The project goals are simple, as you can see on the screen, to eliminate known pollution sources, reclaim water to reduce demand on limited groundwater resources, protect underground storage capacity, and leverage multiple funding opportunities. Since its inception, the program has steadily moved forward, protecting groundwater. Can you do next slide for me, please? I can just tell you when to move if you can move it, Sylvia. Is that good? Okay, great. So since its inception, again, the program has steadily moved forward, protecting the groundwater within the Mission Creek subbasin, which is our community's only source of drinking water. Some of the recent and more notable accomplishments include making more than 4,500 parcels and homes sewer ready, adding 33 miles of new sewer lines, and the prevention of more than 782 million gallons of sewage from percolating into the groundwater each year. As the new Nancy Wright Regional Water Reclamation Facility comes online later this fall, we'll have the additional capacity to treat as much as 1.5 million more gallons of wastewater each day, allowing us to further these efforts. As I mentioned earlier, the program, the current groundwater protection program was reinitiated in 1985, and that was a septic abatement program. Our board at the time recognized that we needed to preserve and protect our aquifer, so they commissioned a study with the USGS, which called out specific areas within our service area, noting problems within the proximity and density of systems within certain areas of our service area. And they identified this as a primary threat to our aquifer. And it was at that time we understood that it's not a matter of when these or if these systems are going to fail, but more a matter of when they're going to fail. And we needed to get ahead of that. Now, it's no secret that MSWD serves a disadvantaged community, and that cleaning up groundwater contamination is anywhere from 10 to 100 times less expensive if you can tackle it at the source. Our board and our community understood that the risk that they were taking if they failed to act. And so they have agreed to self-assess the cost of moving away from the septic to the master wastewater system themselves. This commitment has been ongoing, as you can see on the slide, from the Assessment District 11, Assessment District 12, Assessment District 15, and most recently, Assessment District 18, which was passed by the voters in November of 2019. Next slide, please. On your screen and in your slides, you'll see a map of our service area. The green area there in the center, that's the area that was already sewered and is not part of the program as it was reimagined in 1995. The orange area, that's the area that has been completed under the program. There are two, before I move on and talk about the other areas, I should point out that there are two phases for when we want to create master sewer lines. The first, we must do the design. Then we do construction. The design phase is very technical, as sewer is typically one of the lowest utilities in the ground. And so when our engineers are looking at that and creating the pathways to move forward, they have to take into consideration all of the other utilities that are already there. This is also more costly when we go into the construction phase. It would be much easier for us to design and construct if we were to go in and build a brand new subdivision where there is no homes yet there's no utilities there. So the cost and the design all are more cumbersome because we are putting it where there is already utilities. We have taken all of our areas, our assessment districts, and we have broken them into sub-areas. This is so that we can take better advantage of the funding opportunities as they become available to us. We've broken down each into these sub-areas, making the project more flexible, scalable, which is very advantageous to us when we're applying for grant funding. Now, looking back at the map, you'll see we have purple. This is the areas that are currently under design. The top of your screen, you'll see one area that I want to call out specifically, and that's Mission Lakes Country Club. That is an area that was identified in that 1996 study that said that there are homes there that are very close in proximity, and the density is a problem for us in that area. Also, you can see there's dark blue. Those are areas that are shovel ready to go. The design has been completed. And then you'll see one turquoise area. That's an area that still needs to be designed. We also have a couple areas there in red, and these are areas that have been designed, and we have identified funding, and they are next in line for construction. And this is just a breakdown of those assessment districts. It gives you an idea of the cost. These are the cost and how we might break up those into phases, each of those sub-areas into further phases. Now, speaking of funding, as I mentioned in one of my first slides, one of the priorities and one of the tenets of this program is that we're leveraging multiple funding streams and we're keeping costs lower for our customers. We have chosen to structure our assessment districts so that homes or parcel owners are only responsible for 50% of the cost, and then we go out and we get state and federal grants to cover the other 50%. Now, a question I get asked a lot is, could we move faster if we just put the entire cost on those homeowners and on those customers? Absolutely, we could build it right away. But we have found for our customer base and for our residents, cost is a very big concern for them. So it's worked better for us to do it this way. To give you some examples, you can look at some of our neighboring wastewater utilities as close as the high desert, or even here's some in our own Coachella Valley. Those assessments range between $15,000 and $25,000 for the same type of connection, where in contrast, in 2019, when we went out for our assessment district, our 2018 dollars, said that our home and parcel costs would be closer to $8,000. So you can see the difference, $8,000 versus the $15,000 to $25,000 per home or parcel. Now, I concede back in 2019, we were seeing more opportunities for grant funding for wastewater projects. We had COVID, where we saw a lot of the dollars all shift, and we saw a lot of changes happening within the grant atmosphere. Since COVID, we've seen definitely a shift. You'll see priorities such as the Salton Sea, climate resiliency, and even clean water projects now have really been in the spotlight since we've come back from COVID. We see some of those projects, especially like clean water in the San Joaquin Valley. We see them even here in our own eastern Coachella Valley, where those have really taken a priority for some of those funding dollars. But that said, we are seeing more gravity and more coming towards us now on these wastewater projects in recent years. So to give you some examples, for fiscal year 2018, that would be prior to COVID, we had $1.2 million identified for us in the USACE work plan, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers work plan. In fiscal year 2022, post-COVID, we were looking at $250,000 appropriated to us in the energy and water appropriation bill, so that you can see the contrast there. Then in fiscal year 2023, we moved up to about $800,000 in the energy and water appropriations bill. And then in the last fiscal year 2024, we were provided with $2.7 million of water appropriations. This year, we are written into the budget right now at $4 million for fiscal year 2025, but that budget is still under review and has not been passed by Congress. In addition to all of the federal funding that I just mentioned, we're also working at the state levels. At the state, as you probably already know, we've already been awarded $68 million for the construction of the Nancy Wright facility. In addition to that, a conveyance line, and then one of the areas, the M2, which you saw in that slide before that was red and ready to go for construction, that will serve an additional 700 homes. So that $68 million goes for those three projects. And speaking of the reclamation facility, I did want to invite all of you. We have a ribbon cutting planned for Friday, September 27th at 9:30 a.m. I will make sure you all get digital copies of the invite as well, but we hope that everyone can join us as we unveil that new plant. And that is the end of my prepared presentation. General Manager Macy and I are here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. So I'm not really sure what the protocol is since we have not done this before. If we move to questions or comments from
Yes.
staff and from the board, or how would that normally work?
I would say if the board has any questions, this would be a good time to ask.
Okay, thank you. We'll start with Director Gracia.
I don't think it's appropriate to cross-examine the information that was presented in this forum. I think it's something that should be done at election time, and we're in the throes of that, so I'll reserve my comments for the public.
Very well. Okay. Director Bloomer.
I don't have any questions, but great job and thanks for the presentation.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
Well, first of all, I would like to congratulate your team on the grant-raising capability. It makes me envious that you come up with so much money. Keep that up. I belong to the Can It Happen Faster Club. I live in Area H, and I built my house in 2008. I still don't have a sewer. So I really would encourage you to push it along as fast as possible. But great work so far. Thanks.
Thank you. Vice President Bowman.
Yes, pardon me. I lived in town since 2003, and owning our hotel that we did from 2003 to 2019, and then I currently own a home from 2016 till now. I want to thank MSWD for being proactive in helping our disadvantaged community getting the funds to allow the septic to sewer program to go. I was fortunate that I had some properties in an area that actually got the sewers, and it made a huge difference for all of us in that area. The fact that we were no longer potentially polluting our groundwater was, to me, a real positive thing. My main question is, right now, if we could wave a magic wand, how much money would it take for you to finish everything? I mean, just in a large, it may be a number that's, I don't know.
That number has been questioned a few times. As of the last time we went out in pricing for everything, the entire project would be over $157 million.
Okay, that would be the design and build and...
That's everything, including the Nancy Wright plant. That's everything. Okay. We have a $35 million appropriation, the WARDA appropriation. We will use every bit of that. We will need every cent of that.
Yeah, I know that over the years you guys have been faithful in taking the grants, applying them properly, and getting it done. I live right now up in the Highlands area, which is one that, according to your map, has not even had any plans made for it. I know that we're sitting on nothing but granite, and I have neighbors that every 3 to 6 months have to have their septics pumped. So I know that they're anxious, but it appears that that's the last one to be dealt with. And all I can say is, how can we help? How could DWA help you?
Well, I will say that I was very pleased this year. We reached out to your public affairs team, and they did provide us a letter of support. And it's one of the first times we have received a letter of support, to my knowledge, for our project. And I want to thank staff for making that happen. So thank you. And I think that type of camaraderie goes a long way. So thank you.
I could get out my checkbook. Well, I was pondering this past week that we've had inflation hit our country pretty heavy. And back in the day when we moved to Desert Hot Springs, the push to get the septics to sewers was happening. The cost, I don't know if you were to look at the notes in like 2007, 2008, I don't know if they've tripled, quadrupled, to put the septics or get rid of the septics and put them to sewer. Had we homeowners then said, we'll pay the full tilt, it would have probably been cheaper than now with grants. And of course, 2020 is always hindsight in this. So all we can say is, if there's anything we can do to help you get more grants for that area or to support it, as a homeowner and as a director here, fully supportive of it.
Thank you. I think to follow up on that, obviously, or I hope it's obvious, that both of our agencies have an interest in protecting groundwater in the Mission Springs subbasin. You're doing the heavy lifting up there right now to make that happen, but of course we have an interest in that as well. So I think back to Vice President Bowman's comment, to follow on that, cooperation and how we can support that, maybe even in ways that don't involve just a letter of support, are things that I would like this board to perhaps explore with your board in the future. I also really appreciate the invitation to come see the reclamation plant, which we're excited to hear about as well. We know that goes a long way towards protecting that groundwater basin. And other than that, I don't have anything else to add except to thank you all for coming today. It's something that we've been talking about for a while here on our board, and I'm glad to have received this update. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we can move to item 7, which is our consent calendar. And these are considered to be routine items and acted upon by one motion of the board without discussion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a board member requests a specific item to be discussed and or removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Did you have a question?
I would like to pull item E because I have a comment to make on that.
Okay, so we can do that. Are there any other directors who have items on this list that would like to? Okay, so we can pull item E for further discussion at this point. And that item is request board authorization for general manager to execute the DWA and City of Palm Springs cost share agreement for cooperative turf rebate program. And as Secretary Treasurer McKenna was the one who asked that to be pulled, I'll let him ask his question or make comment.
I passed through the airport on Sunday, and I noticed that they have allowed the median strips on Kirk Douglas Way to dry up. And it made me think that we have a program for turf abatements. I want to make sure that when there's a mandatory turf abatement coming down from the state, and I think this one was, that we don't find ourselves giving rebates to entities, public or private, that would later be required to remove turf, perhaps because of the state mandate. I don't want to find a situation where we give them a rebate this year, and 2 years from now they would have to do it anyway. And so I wanted to make sure that we have a policy in place, or our policy is tailored to not giving rebates to people who later may have a mandatory turf abatement imposed on them. So my comment is really to staff, and a comment for our environmental committee is, are we protected against that happening?
Maybe I'll let staff take that on first, and then I'll have a comment. Or I could make my comment.
I'll have a comment when you're ready.
Yeah. Well, let's start with Director Gracia.
I concur 100% what you've said. I think it may have come up during our subcommittee meetings, and I share your thoughts on that. And it's clear that some of these people that, entities that you're talking about are going to fall into that category. And I know we reduced our contribution to the conservation program by a couple of $1 million this last budget. Hopefully we'll continue to focus on residential like we have. Just in today's agenda packet, there are several payments. I don't think any of them were to public agencies, so I think we should continue to focus on that and not on, not to say people shouldn't apply. If the city wants to apply for turf conversion, I think they should be able to do that. but I think this board should be, as a full board, probably participating in those decisions as opposed to when it comes to public agencies. I'm thinking the city in general, some of the things they're doing over there. There's also on the city council agenda next meeting, a discussion of this for their city hall. And I don't know what that entails, so it'll be interesting to see what they come up with. But that's been a sore spot, I guess, for decades. And so they're going to talk about that, I think, in September. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, I agree.
Well, as a follow-up to that, it's not just local governments that will be fall under the mandate of a non-functional turf, or the lack of, or I should say, the prohibition of using potable water for non-functional turf. It's not just city governments or local governments. It's also businesses. It's also homeowners associations, and they will be staggered over a period of several years, starting in 2007, 8, and 9. 2027, 2028, and 2029. So it's not, again, it's not just the city that would potentially fall under what you were requesting, Secretary Treasurer McKenna. It would also be homeowners associations. So these are definitely things that we should talk about in terms of how we tailor the program in the future. But with that, I will let staff respond if they have any further comments.
Good morning, President Ortega and members of the board. I also see the general manager getting ready to possibly speak, but he's
well, because he has his tie on.
Victoria Lort, Director of Public Affairs and
Thank
Conservation. You. And so just to address the comments and then also to bring it back to the item before you today, we do have a Public Affairs and Committee meeting scheduled for September 4th, Wednesday, September 4th. And I believe that we can further discuss our NFT outreach and policy at that time. I do want to mention, however, though, that we do, the agency and the water industry as a whole are facing compounding regulations with the Making Conservation a California Way of Life, coupling that with this non-functional turf ban. And so our program right now is not currently structured to prohibit anyone who is going to be mandated in 3 to 4 years to not receive any rebate funding. If anything, we are really trying to increase our outreach to those individuals and make sure that they do that so that us as an agency can also benefit from their potential water savings as we have to strive to meet our Making Conservation a California Way of Life targets. So I'll just say that for that, but we can certainly have further discussion at the Public Affairs and Conservation Committee and see if we need to change our direction for that. The item before you today is a MOU cost-sharing agreement with the City of Palm Springs as it relates to our current turf rebate program. And this cost-sharing agreement dates all the way back to 2022 to when they decided, and we are so grateful that they did because it increased the participation, when they decided to include a $1 match to our program for City of Palm Springs residents. So the item before you today really just formalizes that agreement so that we can, recoup the costs that we have fronted for that program. But happy to answer any additional questions or also see if General Manager had any.
Well, let's let the General Manager speak, and then if there are any additional questions from the board, we'll go there.
Thank you, Victoria. You basically addressed what I was going to comment on. So, but yes, we definitely have some meetings scheduled for our committees, and at that time we can definitely look at how that program will progress in the future.
Okay, thank you. Director Grasha, do you have any additional questions or comments?
I guess to encapsulate what I think I was trying to say was there are huge amounts of grass that needs to be transitioned that the city owns. And with the limited resources we have, which is what, $1 million a year, I could see them burning through that $1 million and, quickly if the city decided to engage that money. And that would put our homeowners in a back seat. And I don't want to see that happen. So if there's a priority, it should lean toward the small residential properties that want to get rid of grass. And if the grass is green today, but if, and that's the issue with the city, we don't pay to convert dead grass, I guess. Is that right? Or people that haven't been irrigating. There has to be an actual water savings. And anyway, the idea that we would burn through all that cash helping the city comply with the mandates that are coming down from the state, I'm not good with that. So I don't know how you adopt that into anything, but good luck.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, if I may, President Ortega and Director Gracia, I just also want to reassure the board that we are in discussions with the city of Palm Springs and, how best that they can possibly comply with the non-functional turf ban, as well as the Making Conservation a California Way of Life regulations. To this date, they have not approached us about the rebate or utilizing the rebate, and I think that that's certainly a discussion, should they choose to, that we can engage with them. But as stated, our program currently does not prohibit any public agency, city or school district, what have you, from participating in the program as well. But I do want to reassure the board that we have open lines of communication with the city, and they're also undergoing a zoning code update, and they've reached out to us as well to provide comments and feedback. So dialogue is happening, and we are trying to ensure that, that we're able to all comply and participate where we can.
And I just wanted to point out that we do have a member of staff from the city that's currently on this meeting.
Yes, we do. I don't know that. Okay, so we have LP McCloy. She's the Director of Sustainability from the city of Palm Springs present today. She was on the call to address any questions related to the item before you. But we are working very closely with her as well regarding the regulations.
Okay, thank you. Director Bloomer?
I don't have anything.
Okay, thank you. Secretary Treasurer McKenna?
Yeah, just to clarify, I'm not opposed to this item per se, but I do think we should shut the door right away to public entities, public agencies coming to us, taking our ratepayer funds and doing something they have to do anyway. So I would say this is an urgent action item that we should tailor our policy to exclude entities that are going to have to comply otherwise. We ran out of money in previous years, and I think we should be targeting individual homeowners. When I look at an aerial photograph of Palm Springs, I see a lot of green in neighborhoods that were laid out in the 60s and 70s. Those people hopefully will come to us and get some money. I see a lot of green around City Hall as well. So, they should deal with that, but not with our money. That's my point. Thanks.
Vice President Bowman?
I concur with Director McKenna's point.
All right, I have no further comments. So if that's all, can we now move to accepting the consent calendar? I'll look for a motion to.
I move that we adopt the consent calendar as item 7 as presented.
Thank you. I'll look for a second.
I'll
please.
second.
All right, so I have a first from Director Gracia, a second from Director Bloomer, and may we have a roll call vote?
Director Gracia,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
Vice President Bowman,
Aye.
and President Ortega.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next, we can move to item 8. And it looks like we have one item, action item, request board action on customer appeal, Dale Thomas. And I believe our general manager will be giving us that report.
Yes, thank you, President Ortega. Before the board today is an appeal from Daryl Thomas, and Mr. Thomas is requesting relief of financial payment for $726.54, which is his, he has a payment plan, plus his May bill, which is in the amount of $299.87 for a total of $1,026.41. Just a brief summary of Mr. Thomas's account. Back in June of 2023, the property did see an increase in water consumption. However, it was not enough to initiate a reread. Then in May of 2024, Mr. Thomas was placed on a payment plan program for a total amount of $871. Apparently, Mr. Thomas had a couple events that occurred at his house, at his property. There was a leak of his pool. That was discovered in May of 2024. Then in May and June of 2024, there was another leak that he found on his slab of his home. And at this time, Mr. Thomas has requested in the appeal that the amount requested is forgiven, and if the board does decide to deny the appeal, there will be no fiscal impact to the agency. If the board does decide to grant the appeal, the agency may credit the account up to $1,026.41. Staff's recommendation is to deny the appeal of Mr. Thomas. And at this time, I would ask the board president to invite Mr. Thomas to the podium if he is present. I know there is a gentleman, Mr. Thomas is present, and this would be the time where Mr. Thomas can address the board if he would like to.
Before we do that, I want to be reminded for both remind the public as well as the board that this is not a public hearing. So as far as I can tell, we are going to, as in past, as past practice, the applicant or the gentleman, Mr. Thomas, can make a presentation, but there won't be an opportunity for questions. Is that correct? And perhaps our counsel can help here if need be.
So I believe if the board has questions for Mr. Thomas, they can ask him questions. I believe that is an option to the board, but I will ask Mr. Riddell if I was incorrect on that.
No, I agree with that. If the board has questions, there's nothing to prevent the board from asking questions. There's no adopted procedure that prevents it or anything like that.
Okay, so we will have Mr. Thomas come up here to the podium, if he will, and he can give his comments and presentation, and then if there are additional questions, we can address them at that time. Thank you, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to come out and make my personal appeal. I'm a huge believer in stewardship. I've been a farmer out in Texas, had a well, and so I'm very cognizant of the importance of water and guarding it. And in fact, I had a separate electric meter tied to the well so that I could see visibly if things were going on where I might not be able to see if it was underground, i.e. a leak or something along those lines. So I could meter my pump in Texas because I could see how much power I was using. So I was able to correct things. What happened here is a series of events that kept masking an underlying issue that I never in my wildest dreams thought was going to hit me. So I had my in-laws move in with us. So I thought, okay, a water bill started going up. Got 2 more adults. So I didn't really think too much about it. And then I heard my autofill start going on. This was a couple of months later. I thought, okay, I'm going to pay attention to this. Realized that there is a leak. And so got that fixed. But the issue that we have, and first of all, I want to say that Priscilla was great. She's one of the employees that works in the area of public relations. I'm not sure, but anyway, she did a super job. So I'm always dealing with after the fact, sometimes 2 months between the time I fix something and by the time I get a bill. And I feel strongly that what happened is this series of events that kept masking each other prevented me to find out the underlying huge issue was that underneath the ground, underneath my house, the pipe was going away. And, you know, over time, I'm sure all of us have had water pressure that fluctuates a little bit. Then it finally stopped. And then I recognized I had a problem. Well, 8 months have gone by, and that trickle has been happening and growing and growing. And I'm not seeing it because I'm looking at things on top of the ground, things that I can see, things that I can fix and remedy. Well, when the water went out, you know, now I had a huge water bill. Then I had to pay for the plumbing. I had to pay for the leakage. And all the time, DWA should have brought to my attention, you are way over. You are really over. And offer a plan maybe. I don't know what policies are, but, you know, say, hey, have you ever thought a leak about underneath your house? No. And, you know, maybe if DWA would have had a joint program, say, let us share the cost, or let us look and see if you have a water issue, it would have created a solution instead of just a delay. And I'm getting hit with these huge bills. Well, you know, part of my income is Social Security. I mean, I'm sitting there, okay, I'm helping my in-laws, I'm paying these water bills, and it's just crazy. And so what I'm asking for is assistance and maybe an idea of a program for other people that are having leaks that you can't see.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Director Grasha, do you have any questions? Sir, you could stay at the podium, please. Yeah, we might have questions for you. Thank you.
First, let me ask the staff, does the file that we have in our agenda packet include everything that you collected on this case?
Yes,
I'm thinking, and did you ever, the repair contracts or for the work that was done like on your pool or your slab, do you have receipts for that work?
What I was trying to have them on text. I don't have a really simple way to
I mean,
include them.
they gave you
Yeah, I have from text the contractors, and then I have an invoice from American Auto Leak or whatever they were. They came out and found the leak, and I can provide that.
And that was something, what, $5,000 repair?
Fortunately, I got it to around 3,000.
Okay. I thought it said over 5, but
Well, that was with the pool, because the pool was more money.
Anyway, this was the first time there has been a compelling argument for, you know, he did everything that we hope that people do, actually fix the leak. I assume now your meter is running properly and you're...
I don't know, because you have to wait for another 30 days before the usage, and then you get the invoice. I'm always behind having real-time information, or I'd have fixed it before.
And we're in the middle of that upgrade too. I was thinking to myself, can we go out and give him one of those new meters? But I guess the backbone of that system's got to be put in place, so that's another thing. But anyway, it's my belief that in this case that it's possible. He's done everything we would hope someone would do to conserve and get their leaks fixed, so that, you know, our responsibilities to the state are maintained, as well as his own interests in keeping his water bill down. So if he's willing to provide those invoices that have been paid to staff, I think that we should consider providing relief in this case, where it's the only time that I've seen a compelling argument for relief. So that's my opinion. If there's a second to that, then good. One other thing, when we get our agenda packet with this information, we don't get your address, we don't know who, I think we get your name. I was curious, it sounded like it's a single family home,
It's a single family home.
Right. And you're responsible from curb to curb on the upkeep and maintenance.
On curb.
I've been through that myself. It seems easy, but it's not. So anyway, that's my opinion. So I don't know where you live. I don't know if you're in my district or not. And,
Cove, right? Cathedral City Cove?
I'm in the Cove.
yeah. Where?
Cathedral City Cove.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thank you, Director Gracia. Director Bloomer.
I was just going to encourage you to apply for the United Way. We have a where you can get assistant program.
You did that.
I already did that. Okay, then I would encourage you to stay on your payment plan because we typically, as an agency, when it's on the other side of the meter, it's the homeowner's responsibility.
I understand it's
Yeah.
my responsibility, but I believe that there's a joint responsibility as far as stewardship. And my meter, I'm having to deal with it always 30 days after the fact, and that's an issue.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nope.
No. Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
Yeah, I sympathize with your run of bad luck here. What caught my eye about this case is that you did apply but did not qualify for the Help to Others program, and I want to ask staff about that because we set aside a lot of money for that program, and the uptake is less than we set aside. Money is left over. So is that income qualification something we should look at? You didn't qualify because gross income is high, his net income is low. Is there any discretion on that program?
Are you directing that to finance?
To our finance director, sir, yes.
Good morning. Director McKenna, the program, it's in order to qualify, you have to be at 200% below the median household income. And so on the Inland SoCal United Way website, there is a chart that breaks it down per the number of people in your household and what the total maximum combined annual income is.
Have we got discretion to change that?
No, it's, who sets that? It's the United Way program, but the median household income is set by,
It's set federally. It's 200% of the federal poverty line.
But who decided that it's 200 rather than 300, say? Is that?
So United Way is the one that administers that program.
do?
And so it's all of the districts that are involved with being a part of that program. So it's program-wide, and they manage it program-wide rather than each agency individually setting their own standards. Now, we do have discretion over the amount of dollars that we provide. So we provided $200 annual credit for those that qualify versus others have 100 or 150. We maintained a $200 to provide additional benefit. We increased that during COVID, and we have not decreased it since then.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Vice President Bowman.
Yeah, I have several questions for you. Thank you for coming and speaking what you've experienced. You said you used to own a well at your home out of state?
Yes.
Here at your current home, did you ever check your meter, turn the water off at your house, and check your meter to see if there was movement?
No, sir. I didn't know that that would be the way to do that, and it was not suggested to do that either. And the meter from my house is approximately 60, 70 yards. I mean, it's a long ways.
Right.
But, if somebody would have suggested that, I would have taken that action. But that having a water leak underneath the house where it goes right back with the aquifer without any human touch was the last thing on my mind, because there is no telltale signs of water standing or green grass or anything. I mean, I don't know where the leak was depth-wise, but it was under the house and there was nothing there. And once it was fixed, what I did is had the contractor, the plumber, reroute up on top of the house instead of under the house, so that any future time I'll see a leak.
Well, I'm sympathetic in a sense. However, if you had a well at one time and you were sensitive to water, first thing I would have done was to say, hey, wait, after I got that first bill, something's wrong here, and turn off, pardon me, everything in my house, and then go look at the meter to see if there's movement.
And I don't disagree with that, but again, I had masks on. I had 2 new adults that moved in. I found out I had a pool leak, and so methodically you fix those things, and then you realize, well, what is going on here? Why is my water usage still high? And so I applied for the payment plan, and it was still high. And I'm sitting there saying, this is crazy. And then when the water finally got so low pressure, I'm saying, there's a leak someplace. Where? I mean, because is it underneath my neighbor's yard? I mean, he has rock, so I couldn't have seen if there was green grass there. I mean, everything I was dealing with was way after the fact, and there was no visible indication.
Understood. And lastly, you had made a point that water went back to the aquifer.
Mm-hmm.
In a sense, our water underneath this is there. In a way, it's free, but it costs all of us the electricity, the piping, and everything to pump it up to the residences. And so it is valuable in that sense.
A comment on that. I agree that it costs a lot of money to get water up, but it also costs a lot of cost to do wastewater. Well, this water was virgin water. It went right back to the aquifer, and I'm not getting any credit for that. So I'm paying for something I'm not using, and I think that is another contention that I'm having to look back in history, minimum of 45 days. I mean, there's not any possible way to realize that was happening.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have one question for our finance director, I guess, and that would be, is there a way to modify the payment plan so as to extend the length of payment?
At discretion of the board, we can modify the payment plan up to 3 years.
And what is the current payment plan?
The current payment plan that anybody can qualify for is 12 months.
Okay. And that's what we're talking about in this particular case?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you. All right. All right, I don't have any further questions or comments, so I will be looking for a motion from the board on how to proceed.
Oh, I have one more question. Would it help if it was a 3-year payment plan?
It would help my budget, but I think from a standpoint of what is right, I don't think that it answers that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that question. Anyone want to take a stab at this?
Not my district.
Well, it doesn't matter whether it's your district.
know.
It's still in our agency.
Put it on her.
Okay. Director Bloomer, would you? Oh, Vice President Bowman,
I would like
please.
to make a motion that
Yes.
we shift our customer to a 3-year payment plan and make it easier to pay it back.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Well, don't we have to make a motion to deny the appeal or
Oh,
approve the appeal?
okay.
That's the motion,
Okay.
right? Or is it a
Or
separate motion
could-
for the 3-year payment plan?
Could it not be? I believe
You
you, or
can-
maybe
you
our
can-
council can answer that. Council?
Muted.
You're on
Mike, you're
mute.
muted.
Mike, you're muted. Thank you.
I understood the motion to be to assume denial and instead to move it to a 3-year payment plan instead of a 1-year payment plan.
That would be correct.
So how do I want to say? Will that work as a motion then? If the Vice President will clarify?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to take a stab at
Yes,
it
with
again?
that
Thank you.
clarification, deny, but shift him to a 3-year payment plan.
Okay, thank you. So I have a first from Vice President Bowman. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, I have a second from Secretary Treasurer McKenna. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Gracia,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
Vice President Bowman,
Aye.
and President Ortega.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we can move to item 9, which is the Secretary Treasurer's report. Secretary Treasurer McKenna. Thank you.
The financial highlights for June 2024. Operating fund received $3.5 million in water sales revenue and $90,000 in recycled water sales revenue. We received $82,500 in construction deposits, and we paid out $7.2 million in accounts payable. Ouch. It's a big number because we paid for the Caballeros water main replacement. And I'll note also that we paid $750,000 to Edison in June. I'll come back to that during my remarks later. We have pending on year-to-date water sales. On active accounts, we have 23,588, which is a reduction of 13. We had 23 customers turned off for non-payment, which is about average. The general fund received $512,000 in property taxes, $204,000 in state water project refunds, and paid out $1.1 million to state water project charges for a total year-to-date of $22 million. Wastewater fund received $213,000 and paid out $175,000.
All right. Are there any questions for Secretary Treasurer McKenna? No? All right. We can move to the General Manager's report. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, President Ortega. So the first item on the GM report is our Chino Reservoir Fire Hazard Abatement project. So the City of Palm Springs Fire Department they do a lot of inspections in high fire areas. And one of the properties that they inspected was our Chino Canyon Reservoir property. And they determined that there was some vegetation that needed to be removed along the roadway section. So the agency did contract with Down to Earth Landscaping and cleared the zone, that area. And the work was completed in the amount of $4,878. And there's a couple photos. There's a before photo and then an after photo. So the area that was cleaned out. Our next item, I am going to let Director Sines discuss this item.
Thank you, General Manager Johnson. So we wanted to provide you with a strategic planning project update. If you recall, back in 2023 in September, the board directed staff to begin the process of establishing a strategic plan for the agency. And we underwent that process and we received 3 proposals. And ultimately, the board decided not to move forward with those proposals and directed staff to reissue the request for proposal to solicit from a larger pool of potential consultants. And in May 2024, that RFP was reissued, and we set a deadline of July 22nd to receive those proposals, which for that new proposal request, we received 2 new ones, and they have been reviewed by staff, and the preferred provider has been selected to move forward with contract negotiations, which are currently underway. The draft contract is currently with the consultant for review. I anticipate to receive that back sometime this week with their comments. And once those contract negotiations are complete, the contract will come before the full board for approval at what we hope to be the August 20th board meeting, and a target start date at the beginning of September with approximate 6 to 8 month duration of the project.
All right, thank you, Director Sines. Next item is regarding DWR's 2023 Delivery Capability Report. So this report is used widely outside both within and outside the State Water Project for water supply planning, and it's a key component of drought planning done by the State Water Project. So in July of 31st of 2024, they released their report, and according to the report, the State Water Project delivery capability and reliability could be reduced as much as 23% in 20 years due to changing flow patterns and extreme weather shifts. So this 23% decline would be equivalent to about 496,000 acre-feet a year of water, which is enough to supply over 1.7 million homes a year. So, pretty significant. We have our system leak data. As you see, there are 3 mains that are currently under design that are had some leaks. And we have a Vistachino, which is under design currently. That project takes a little longer because it is in the Caltrans right-of-way, so we are dealing with Caltrans. However, we are working on a design, and hopefully we'll get that out. And that's a larger main. It's a 20-inch main. So it's there are some difficulties in that design with, as Marion had mentioned about the sewer and utilities, this large main, the area that it has to be designed in has several intersections that have a lot of utilities that we'll have to figure out how to get around. And the final item, just the general managers meetings activities. Again, the leading events are the tribal mediations. There were 10 meetings that I attended over the past several weeks. We did have on the 22nd a legislative update meeting that Ms. Lort and I attended. And on the 31st of July, we had our Technology Transformation Committee meeting. And then on the 1st, our Executive Committee meeting. And with that, that concludes my report, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Director Gracia, do you have any questions for Mr. Johnson?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Bloomer?
No questions.
All right. Secretary Treasurer McKenna?
Nothing for me, thanks.
Okay. Vice President Bowman?
None?
Okay. And I have no questions based on the report, so we can move to item 11. Director's reports on meetings and events attended on behalf of the agency. So these would be meetings that our directors have attended since the last board meeting, which I believe was actually 3 weeks ago. These would be events or conferences that you've attended, so please give us the date and the event. And with that, we will start with Director Gracia.
Okay, going back to starting on the 16th at our last agency board meeting. On the 17th, I guess a week after that was Coachella Valley Water District had canceled their meeting. On the 25th, I attended a Aqua-sponsored workforce recruitment and retention meeting. That was the second in a series of 3. I missed that was the third in a series of 3. I missed the second one. Then on August 1st, the Desert Valley Builders Association legislative meeting was very interesting. I got to look back here. It seems like I'm on the 16th. There we go. Wednesday the 17th was Jen Kwan with the regional administrator for the National Oceanic Administration Fisheries Director for the West Coast region. She gave a pretty compelling talk on how her responsibilities with the fisheries through the rivers, Delta Conveyance project and how everything kind of intersects and why it's important to protect the fish. And as I understand it, it's a very big part of why we end up in these protracted cases of litigation that kind of puts a monkey wrench in everybody's business. It was a very interesting presentation. That was an Aqua event, sponsored event. And then on the same day, the Coachella Valley Joint Chamber lunch. This was an event that Director McKenna also attended, so I'll let him. That was non-compensable, but a very interesting meeting. And so I'll be anxious to hear what Director McKenna's ideas on that. Also, the State Water Contractors Board meeting on the 18th I attended, again, non-compensable. And on that same day at 11 a.m., Aqua and Capio co-sponsored a webinar on mastering the op-ed. And now this was a statewide kind of Zoom call kind of thing. And I thought it was important or interesting at least. Our Desert Sun was one of the three presenters. And I'm hoping I have her name here. She's the in charge of the editorial page. There's been certainly 100% turnover at the Desert Sun in the past year or two, maybe three, for sure. Probably turned over 3 times in 3 years, if you've been following their struggles. So I thought it was an opportunity to gain some knowledge and insight into what's going on there, and considering it was a statewide event that was kind of rooting for them in a way, and another, looking for some inside scoop on how to defeat their own mechanisms for propaganda. And then back to July 25th, the Workforce Recruitment and Retention Roundtable. And I think I mentioned this one, the Desert Valley Business Association legislative meeting. So that's it. That was on August 1st. So I'm sorry that sounded convoluted, but I'm trying to read it off a cell phone. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Director Bloomer.
July 18th, I attended the Palm Springs Chamber Mixer at the top of the tram. I'm not sure if that's compensable or not, but Director McKenna was there also, and there was actually a good view of the spreading basins from up there. So that was good, and it was about, 30 degrees cooler?
At least.
Up at the top of the tram. On July 23rd, we had a tribal mediation meeting. On July 30th, we had a tribal mediation meeting. And on August 5th, we had a tribal mediation meeting. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you. Secretary Treasurer McKenna?
As already reported, on July 17th, I attended the Greater Coachella Valley Chamber of Commerce meeting in Desert Hot Springs. It was a small meeting, I think 22 attendees, 4 of whom were water industry people. Director Grasha, myself, Jim Barrett from Coachella Valley Water District, and Ivan Sewell from Mission Springs. So in spite of that overwhelming presence of water people, I did have some good conversations with local business people. On the 18th, I went to the Palm Springs Chamber of Commerce meeting at top of the tram. I'm a habitual user of the tram, so I love it up there. The food was probably the best I've experienced in 2 years at any public event. Again, a good opportunity to talk to local business people and to listen. Mostly their concerns are not about water. Everybody seems to be concerned about the other utility companies, but it's good to listen. I did that on a non-compensable basis because you're our lead up there. July 31st, the Technology Committee. Got to say, I love the progress that's happening on DWA 2.0. We can look forward to human resources payroll going online in January, and the new customer billing going online in February. A lot of testing going on, so we don't have a meltdown. Fingers crossed on that. But I have to compliment the staff on the job they're doing that. A very, very large task being nibbled away at a piece at a time in thorough and professional way. So great work on that. I did attend by Zoom a Mission Springs Water District special meeting yesterday. It turned out to be a one-item agenda. They did 4 minutes of public meeting and 55 minutes of closed session regarding significant exposure to litigation. Your guess is as good as mine, but I'm sure more will come on that later. That was it for me. Thanks.
Can I ask, did you hear if they had a decision at the end of the meeting, or?
They made no decisions that I noticed.
Can we proceed? Thanks. Vice President Bowman.
Yes, thank you. I had the privilege of attending the National Water Resources Association meeting up in Kennewick, Washington.
The Tri-Cities.
Thank you, the Tri-Cities area. And I'd have to say, one of the takeaways for me is as complex as our water issues are, we are fortunate that we're not up in that area where it's compounded even more. Give a summary of some of the workshops that I attended there. One was regarding the history and next steps of the biodiversity opinion that was brought out regarding dikes and dams up in the Saget River area. They're so close to the sea that they have to have gates that allow water to flow to the sea when it's low tide, and then they put the gates down to prevent the water from coming in, the salt water, impeding into their freshwater environment, affecting their ag. And this particular speaker was highlighting one particular dike, dam, gate that they're fighting the closure of it. And I found it fascinating that the struggle between environmental and ag was incredibly present. Lunch break, I was sat at a table with North Dakota water people. And we had a delightful discussion about their issues and our issues, and they were fascinated with our valley and the fact that we are, an aquifer-based provider, and that we must replenish that. And I was able to direct them to a YouTube presentation I did a number of years ago about the water in the valley, especially I called it the hidden waters of Desert Hot Springs, where I talk about the aqueduct going through the hills of Desert Hot Springs, and then how it comes into our valley through the Worsley or Windy Point area. And it was just fun talking to them. Then we talked about the problem they talked about the problem of the Snake River dams, and the dams in that area that create electricity, allow the barges to flow or go up and down the river in such a way that I didn't know this, but it made sense once they said it. Barges are more cost effective than trucks or rail because they can move it, they just sort of can coast down the river. And the challenge they face there is the removal of these dams and locks that help them do all this. It's a real problem for them dealing with that environmental issue. And then one of the other presentations was on the urbanization of irrigation districts. And I had never thought of that. You have an ag district that for decades, that's all they do is provide water to farms. And now all of a sudden, homes are being built, and they have to shift and provide the water to these new developments and create new ways to get it there, either taking it off the aqueducts that they have or finding another source, and I just found that fascinating. Lastly, without boring you too much, there was a whole discussion on invasive species, the quagga and zebra mussels. And up in that area, it can be devastating. And there was one presentation where they literally took a section of the Snake River and they killed everything in this particular section to eliminate the mussels that were starting to grow. The PR that they had to do to get everybody's buy-in that it's okay for the fish to die and all the other little critters in this section was remarkable. It showed that with proper PR, you can convince even the strongest environmentalist that we have to figure out a way to deal with this, and they pulled it off quite well. And within months after doing this, everything was flourishing again. So I was ultimately very impressed with it all. So we think our issues are challenging. They have our issues plus changes up there in ways that I can't imagine having to deal with it. But I was impressed with how they handled things. Also, that takes me, I did a Zoom call with the CVWD regarding our principals issues on the 30th. 31st was our technology transformation 2.0. I agree with Director McKenna. Staff is doing a phenomenal job. Executive Committee 8.1 and 8.5, another principals meeting, one of many. That's my report.
Thank you. So I did attend 2 conferences in the last 3 weeks since our last board meeting. The first was from the 17th to the 19th in the lovely city of Omaha for the Groundwater Management Districts Association. And then the second was on 7/23 through 25, which was, as Vice President Bowman mentioned, the NWRA conference in the in the Tri-Cities of southeastern Washington. The first conference in Omaha is only focused on groundwater management, but like the conference the following week, it does involve a lot of agricultural or irrigation districts. When often, and again, as Vice President Bowman mentioned, their issues tend to be different from what we encounter, and I always leave those types of meetings thinking how much easier in the long run we seem to have it here in the Coachella Valley, dealing with how we deliver domestic water and how we sustain the aquifer. We seem to be blessed with many natural attributes that help us to do that, and so it gives you a real appreciation of that, attending these meetings, but it's also quite informative. Sometimes it's interesting just for the sake of being interesting. So for instance, the conversation about the quagga in the Snake River and how that was dealt with, it actually involves several states because it is the snake moves into the Columbia, and then so it involves Washington and Oregon as well, where luckily that invasive species hasn't been found yet, but obviously reliant on the state of Idaho to address it before it becomes a problem further downstream. The other presentation that Vice President Bowman mentioned about the urbanization of these irrigation districts in rural parts of the West in particular, that I found interesting. It wasn't just how to address a new type of customer. It was also dealt with the issues of governance, which I had never, ever thought about before. And that had to do with the fact that in some of these cases, these irrigation districts don't allow for or limit the kind of opportunity for directors to serve on the board who are not farmers or not involved in the irrigation district, and how that becomes a challenge for these irrigation districts, not only to address a new type of customer, but also to reevaluate how they are governed in terms of how those directors are elected. Again, things I had not really considered before, and certainly not in our context. As far as the ground, one thing I noted that was kind of similar in both conferences was our conference in Omaha started off with, which I thought was very interesting, started off with a presentation on the history of that area and how water developed in that area of Omaha, which relies both on rivers and groundwater, and that was driven largely by farming and the development of the city of Omaha and the cities on the other side of the Missouri and Iowa. And then again, we had another presentation in Kennewick that also had to do with conservation, but this time from the perspective, in terms of when I talk about conservation, I mean historic preservation, in the context of the Bureau of Reclamation, which I don't think we'll ever have to encounter, but we might at some point, in terms of historic significance of certain lands, and given the presence of tribal lands in our service area, that may actually be something we end up addressing at some point if there's a nexus with the federal government. So again, those were both, I thought they were both good conferences. One thing that did kind of come out of Omaha that I found was a little bit interesting was that the GMDA is planning to do their winter conference in Temecula, which seemed interesting considering that the organization that's putting it together is from Colorado. So I will be speaking with them this week about how that might be rethought, reconsidered, perhaps because I have asked for my input and our agency's involvement in helping them put that together. But I will certainly be meeting with them over the phone this week to see how that might work, and if there is a reason to pursue that further. We'll be talking about that with staff and then presenting something to the board at some point. So with that, I think that's it. And so we can move to item 12, which is director's comments and requests. So I'll start with Director Gracia.
I don't have any requests, but a comment, the quagga mussels that you referred to, it's a nationwide problem now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they went into how it got here in the bilge of a
Yes.
container ship from somewhere. I don't remember what country, but anyway, it's a problem that affects us here too. I'm sure you guys, sure you know. I just thought maybe people at home would think this was a subject only of out-of-state concern, but our own conveyance systems here are affected by it. Coachella Valley Water District actually has a surcharge on their bills for maybe not the residential bills, but for like the farmers pay. I think it's like $3 an acre foot for surcharge to keep the mussels from at bay. They have inspectors up at the lake. They were going to close the lake to public use, but then there was an outcry, so they can continue to keep it open. But that charge on the bill for the farmers, I guess, pays for that. But it's a fascinating subject and a real threat. I actually went to the effort. I was concerned that, well, if they grow on the piers and the bilges of your boats, that it would somehow, because if it gets into the public water system, it'd be a bad deal to the, I don't know if human population would have to exit the area, but it's serious business. But I was assured by Jim Barrett over at CVWD that when we receive the recharge from the Colorado River, that the mussels are not able to live through the percolation process. So he assures us that we're safe on that, but that was a concern I had on that subject a couple of years ago, and he was kind enough to explain, don't worry, son, we got this figured out. So I think we can all be grateful for that, but it is a serious issue. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Bloomer.
No comments or requests, thank you.
Okay, Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
I want to talk about climate breakdown again. July 5th, we had a temperature in Palm Springs of 124 degrees, which is an all-time record. July 21st was a historic day as well, and not just because a particular candidate pulled out of a particular political race. July 21st was the highest average surface temperature ever recorded on Earth. And a climate scientist interviewed by Associated Press said, if we'd had instruments, that would have been a 120,000-year record broken that day. It would have lasted one day because it was broken again the following day, even higher. Been talking to general manager and got some information back from staff about the possibility of introducing solar power to power our wells. You say, well, we need 6 acres of real estate for each well, which is a challenge. But I want to just take an illustration. This is for illustration, not extrapolation. But I have my Edison utility bill here for July. I installed solar in my house in 2016. It cost $22,000, about $17,000 after the tax credit. My current Edison bill is a credit of $482. My true up for the year, I'm in credit by $300. The last time I paid any money at all was September 2021. The system that I put $15,000 in has generated $36,000 worth of electricity since then. And it will probably run, fingers crossed, for another 15 or 20 years. I think it's imperative that we develop a policy for wearing 100% renewable energy. This is a board that sets policy, guided and assisted by the professional staff on the other side of the room. I think we should make that a policy. I think we have a financial benefit. It's going to be clear there's a financial benefit. We do the analysis. There are environmental sustainability benefits. There are resilience benefits. And to me, it's a moral and ethical imperative. You know, the state has objectives for introducing renewable energy to the electricity system. They're looking at 60% renewable by 2030. That's a really, really low target in my view. I would like this board, I would like the staff to bring to executive committee a policy that we would adopt to go 100% renewable by 2030. I think we could do it. I think it would pay. And I think it's an ethical imperative. That's my view.
Thank you. Vice President Bowman.
I'd like to echo Director McKenna's points, and that it's time for us to look at what we're doing in the renewable area. It may be, you know, like we've done with our technology transformation. We do it in steps, but we analyze it and we think about the future regarding our energy usage. And so I second the idea. And this is not a vote, but I'm just letting staff know that this is something on my radar as well. I'd like to understand what we currently have out there. I know we have some panels that provide here for the plant, what they're doing, how they're doing, and then what can we do in the future to make this even better. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a couple of comments. I believe all members of this board recently received an email from Aqua about an upcoming webinar. I think the date might be the 20th. In fact, it is the 20th of this month. And Aqua is doing a webinar called Making Conservation a California Way of Life. And it's something that we've sort of bandied about for a while. It's something that I've been following for quite a while now. It's something that we do talk about on the Conservation and Public Affairs Committee. But it, for me, along with the prohibition on using potable water for non-functional turf, these are two separate regulations and legislation but they are going to really change, really change what the landscape looks like here in the desert. And I don't feel, I mean, other than an article that appeared in the Desert Sun 2 weekends ago, a very extensive article, sort of as what I looked at as a survey of how the 6 water agencies in the Coachella Valley are looking at these laws and how they're going to address them in the next few years. There doesn't seem to me to be a lot of outside of what our own agencies are doing in terms of public outreach. But I think generally speaking, doesn't seem to be a lot of concern and or information out there in the general public. We'll go back to the comments earlier, or I'll go back to the comments earlier about the turf rebate program and the city of Palm Springs, for example. And I'll specifically talk about the airport. So the airport is, I would assume, considered a government agency, a local government agency. It is owned by the city of Palm Springs, and it will be one of the first areas or first bodies that will have to address this issue of using potable water for non-functional turf. And we all know there's a lot of it there at the airport. And having been to the airport twice in the last 3 weeks and seeing the incredible amount of water running down the street through the gutters and onto the sidewalks, it makes me very concerned that an entity like the airport or some of these other city properties are going to be able to meet that challenge. So it's important, I think, for all the members of this board to really understand what these laws are about. And I think I'd encourage people to sign up for that webinar if they haven't done so already, as at least a starting point. And I know this is something, or I believe, because I've asked a few times, that this is something that our staff will be presenting to the board in terms as it becomes clear how the agency is going to respond to these laws, and what those proposals to the board are in terms of how we deal with that. I think it's going to change the way we do business in quite a significant way, and it's certainly going to change the way that the cities and people in general here do business. So again, if you haven't signed up for already and you have the time, I'd encourage you to do that. The other is that we at Aqua Region 9 has an event on next Tuesday in Temecula. And it looks like most of us will be there, and I'm excited to most of the board will be there, and I'm excited to have that event. I think that's going to be, it's different than a lot of other events that Aqua Regions have done in the past, since it doesn't involve a field trip to a facility of some kind, but it does involve a dessert event at the end. So hopefully that will be a good one, and look forward to seeing the rest of the board there in a week. And I think also Director Signs, you signed up as well. Thank you. All right, so with that, I think we can move into closed session, which is item 13 on our agenda. I see 9:32. If we could be in the boardroom or the conference room at 9:45. Thank you. Are we recording already? All right, thank you. All right, so item 14 on our agenda today is reconvening into open session. I can report that the board did take action on item 13D, which was conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation. I guess I don't know if I need to read this or not, but I will. Name of cases: aqueous film forming foams product liability litigation, master docket number 2:18-MN-2873-RMG, City of Camden et al. Versus BASF Corporation, civil action number 2:24-CV-03174-RMG, City of Camden et al. Versus Tyco Fire Products LP, civil action number 2-24-27-02321-RMG. And the board action was to opt out of the litigation as described. The first was from Director Grasha, the second was from Director Bloomer, and the vote was 5 in favor of opting out versus 0. And with that, I think we're done. Thank you, everybody, for your patience today, and we will see everybody in a couple of weeks. Thank you, staff. And